Ladies and gentlemen, get set. Doug debuts in disguise, whilst with his divine voice, and lands the job. Let's hear this thrilling tale. The Doctor is puzzled. Can this job seriously support all those dogs? The answer is no, but Doug has another side hustle. He's figured out that dogs can understand every command he gives. So he uses the superpower to remotely direct the dogs to borrow stuff from rich folks' mansions. Jewelry, trinkets, the whole shebang, smooth as butter, leaving no trace behind. But a few months ago, Doug had to hit the brakes on this operation. Despite monitoring 10 days cameras, the insurance company failed to spot any suspicious individuals outside. However, the frequent stray dogs caught the agent's attention. After some sleuthing, he finally got a clue or two. Following the clues, he identified the suspect, but this case was just too bizarre. He needed to confirm it in person. That night, after Doug's performance, the insurance agent pretended to be a fan and sneaked into the dressing room to invite Doug to dinner. Doug was cautious and didn't agree, so the agent had to follow him secretly. So the agent found Doug's territory, pulled out his gun, and sneaked in, only to find a Doberman guarding the door. Inside, Doug sensed some trouble from the cameras, and to protect the dogs, he decided to let the guy in. Even though Doug did not admit it, the insurance agent was almost entirely certain that he had identified his target. Getting more and more excited, the agent accidentally shot a bullet. Doug had to tell him, "This stuff's all in the safe." The agent retrieved the lost jewels, but before he left, Doug shockingly invited him to stay for dinner. Who would have thought he actually said yes? I mean, what threat could a guy in a wheelchair possibly pose? The 2 knocks served as the signal for the attack, and subsequently, Doug calmly proceeded to narrate the significant dog-related case. The doctor said this might get a death sentence, but Doug couldn't care less. He had already kicked the bucket time and again. If this is the last time, then it must be fate. But Evelyn told him that everyone has the freedom to choose their own path. Finally, Doug started to share last night's tale. A gang of people stormed into Doug's territory. They were the gang members who had been taught a lesson by Doug. The boss interrogated them hard. The young punk finally tracked Doug down. At this moment, Doug was in a dreamlike state, completely oblivious to the impending danger until a gunshot snapped him to attention. A quick glance at the camera showed a tense situation. The dog sprang to action, and Doug himself got up, preparing for battle. The layout here was intricate, and the passageways were narrow, leaving the gang completely clueless about people's whereabouts. Just a few dogs darting by made their hearts race with fear, and someone peeked through a doggy door. Little did they know, the gang members started to scatter, but obviously the dogs were smarter, leading them into traps one by one. These guys didn't even catch sight of Doug before they got taken out, one by one. Amidst the screams of their fallen comrades, the rest began to tread carefully, but the trap set by the dogs was impossible to tackle. So they started firing at the dogs, but those pups were too nimble to hit. If they didn't take it easy, they'd be ambushed, and then just wait for Doug to come out and harvest them. Watching this chaos unfold, the gang leader started to panic. Seeing his guys drop like flies, he resorted to wild shooting. One of the bullets just grazed Doug, and amidst the chaos, he was already utterly exhausted. He crawled into the room, sat in his wheelchair, and trembled while pouring a drink. The gang leader came charging in, thinking the game was finally over. After the awful night, the story returns to the movie's mysterious start. Doug was stopped and put in a police car. What about the dogs in the car? Doug just nodded, and poof, those pups poured out of the car as if they were off to take flight. After hearing Doug's story, the doctor found it hard to digest. He needed to mull over how to help Doug. But little did he know, in their conversation, Doug was actually harboring some unease. He was restless inside until those few words reminded him of something. He had this unease, and it was then he realized Evelyn had a similar family story too. Evelyn was curious why Doug opened up to her, and Doug smiled, saying it was because they had something in common. The commonality lies in suffering. Doug hit the nail on the head. Evelyn had an abusive father and married an abusive husband. After getting divorced, she raised her child solely with her mother, just like Doug's father. Her ex-husband still lurked around the house, harassing them. After Evelyn left, Doug silently shaved in his cell, donned a clean suit, and the dawn approached. Meanwhile, his doggo squad was on the move. They stormed into the police station, scaring the patrolling officer so much he fainted. Then a puppy snatched the keys, slipped through bars, and left them at the cell door, escape successful. At the same time, Evelyn made it home. The church across from the police station looked stunning in the first light of dawn. Doug steeled himself and took slow, tough steps toward the church. In the background, music played his first ever sung on stage, a French number. With the reflection of the cross casting its shadow, he looked upwards, appearing as if he were receiving the judgment of the Lord, and ultimately, Doug slowly slumped into the encompassing shade. It was like he was pinned to the cross, surrounded by a pack of dogs, struggling between death and rebirth. At this moment, Evelyn drew the curtains and saw Doberman sitting quietly at the door, knowing it was Doug's last guard for her.